Why superpowers collapse. The hidden 5-step pattern. America can't escape. There's a striking pattern in history, a predictable sequence that has destroyed 3 global superpowers over the past 500 years. And right now, in 2025, the United States is walking through that same sequence. Step by step, decision by decision, it ois or es, as if we were reliving the same script that has led to catastrophe every single time before. In the late 1500s, Spain was the richest empire on earth. It controlled half of the world's gold and silver, its army dominated European battlefields, and its currency was accepted everywhere. But within just 80 years, that power was gone. Spain became bankrupt, weakened, and never regained its former glory. Fast forward to 1914, and Britain was the largest empire in human history. Every corner of the globe felt British influence, and the pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Yet within 40 years, that empire unraveled. The currency that once stood for stability collapsed, and Britain became a junior partner to a new power, the United States. Then in 1991, the Soviet Union, armed with nuclear weapons, global reach, and a vast sphere of influence, simply ceased to exist. Not defeated on the battlefield, but undone internally by economic and systemic failure. 3 superpowers, 3 total collapses, and each followed the exact same sequence of decline. What should alarm us most is this. The United States has already passed through 5 of the identifiable stages in this pattern. We are not approaching this, we are deep inside it. This is the story of how superpowers collapse, why they always believe they are immune, and why the data suggests America may be next, and why it's happening faster than most people want to admit. To understand what imperial collapse really looks like, we need to look beyond textbooks and see how it plays out in practice. A collapse doesn't begin with invasion or military defeat. It begins with economic exhaustion, when a nation extends itself beyond its ability to sustain that power. Military installations in scores of countries, wars on multiple fronts, promises the government cannot keep, debts it cannot repay. This is the soil in which collapse grows. At first, decline is almost invisible. The currency still works. The military still wins battles. Politicians still make bold promises. But beneath the surface, cracks begin to form. Resources are misallocated. Production declines. Innovation stalls. The most capable people begin leaving for places still thriving. Then what was slow becomes rapid. Allies hedge their bets. Adversaries test boundaries. Trade partners seek alternatives. The status of a global reserve currency erodes. Suddenly, the very things that made a nation powerful become its vulnerabilities. The currency that was demanded by everyone begins to flood back home. A military spread across the globe becomes a burden instead of a deterrent. Promises backed by strength are revealed as empty words. This isn't theoretical. It has happened 3 times: Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. And it happened because those empires made the same strategic mistakes we are making now, assuming power was permanent, stretching military commitments too far, weakening their currency, and refusing to accept harsh economic realities until collapse was already underway. Spain's rise and fall provides the original blueprint. After the Americas were open to European conquest, Spain became the first real global superpower. It conquered distant empires, seized immense wealth, and for decades shipped hundreds of tons of precious metals back to Europe. Spain's control over silver made its currency highly desirable, creating the illusion of endless wealth. But that wealth bred a fatal arrogance. Spain fought wars nearly everywhere: Europe, the Mediterranean, the Americas, Asia, siphoning off huge percentages of its revenue just to sustain military commitments. Unable to pay its bills with taxes alone, the Spanish crown began to debase the currency, watering down silver coins with lesser metals. The coins' face value stayed the same, but the real value plummeted. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value, inflation surged, and confidence in the economy evaporated. Debt mounted. Spain borrowed relentlessly from foreign bankers. It declared bankruptcy repeatedly over a few decades, each time promising reform, each time deepening the cycle of borrowing and spending. With easy wealth flowing in, local production collapsed. Why grow food when you could import it with silver? Why build ships when you could buy them? Spain became dependent on imports even as its own production ground to a halt. When the mines began to yield less, the system fell apart. Production was gone. Decades of social decay followed, and the empire faded into history. Britain's story follows much the same arc. At the peak of its power, the British Empire stretched across every continent and underpinned global trade with London at its center. The pound was more than currency. It was a symbol of economic dominance. But Britain's military commitments were enormous, and when World War I erupted, the empire chose to fight, borrowing vast sums, particularly from the United States. By the war's end, Britain owed enormous debts and its financial independence was compromised. Attempts to shore up the pound by returning to the gold standard only harmed exports, raising unemployment and weakening industrial capacity. As global tensions mounted again, the economic strain deepened. After World War II, the empire's dissolution accelerated. India, Africa, Asia, one by one, the imperial holdings slipped away. The pound's value faded. A currency that once stood as the world's backbone became, in practice, a regional unit with diminished influence. Then there was the Soviet Union. Powerful, ideologically confident, technologically capable, yet internally decaying. The Soviet economy stagnated as it poured enormous resources into maintaining military parity with the United States and supporting client states across the globe. Factories produced outdated or unusable goods. Farms failed. Innovation lagged. By the early 1980s, the nation that once declared itself destined to bury capitalism was importing basic commodities like grain. Loss of currency trust, diminishing foreign exchange reserves, and a failing economic model left the Soviet system hollow. Within 3 short years, its formal political structure unraveled entirely. Now the United States finds itself walking this same path. The first stage, military overextension, is evident. With hundreds of bases and troop deployments in scores of nations, the costs are staggering. Budgets rise even as strategic commitments multiply. Equipment ages, recruitment flags, and the capacity to respond to simultaneous global pressures weakens. Stage 2, currency debasement, is already well underway. The dollar was untethered from the gold standard decades ago, and since then, the money supply has ballooned. While the mechanism has changed from debasing metal coins, the outcome is eerily similar, a currency losing real purchasing power over time. Inflation, when measured holistically, erodes value just as surely as old-fashioned debasement. Stage 3, the debt spiral, is here. Trillions of dollars in national debt, annual deficits, and mounting interest payments create a cycle where borrowing funds past borrowing. This is the economic definition of a debt spiral, and it mirrors history more closely than many would care to admit. Stage 4 is the loss of productive capacity. The United States still leads in design, technology, and finance, but its base of physical production has shifted overseas. Major industries have been hollowed out, and the nation imports far more than it exports. Dependence on external supply chains is reminiscent of Spain's reliance on imported goods, even while wealth flowed out. Stage 5, social decay, is no longer hypothetical. Confidence in institutions is eroding. Social cohesion frays, public health crises, and crime rise, and demographic trends reveal troubling patterns. Civic trust, once a stabilizing force, now fractures under the weight of political dysfunction. If history is a guide, 2 more stages lie ahead. Loss of reserve currency status as the world moves toward alternative financial systems, and a sudden structural collapse. Not a slow fading, but a rapid unraveling that occurs when economic pressures outstrip political capacity. No superpower ever believes it will be the one to fall, and yet Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union all thought the same thing. They believed in exceptionalism, that their moment was different, that the rules didn't apply. But patterns are not swayed by confidence or rhetoric. Patterns are structural, rooted in mathematics and resource limits and the hard realities of economic life. If history continues to rhyme, we may yet see these stages play out in broad daylight. The pace has quickened in recent years, and the forces driving each stage are stronger and more interconnected than ever. There may yet be opportunities for reform, renewal, and reinvention. Perhaps a path exists that avoids the fate of the empires that came before. But if history's pattern holds true, the road ahead is fraught with risk, and the lessons of the past are more relevant than ever. Because a superpower doesn't fall because of surprise. It falls because it follows a sequence of decisions, many of them avoidable, until they're not. And when that moment arrives, it arrives suddenly. If this insight shifted your understanding of where we stand, subscribe. Because when the next stages arrive, you'll want not just questions answered, but context, clarity, and truth.